Hello, BookTube. All right, we have another shipment of mail this time around, and this time I controlled myself. so we'll open all of them together, and we'll see what we see. We've got a few packages here, and it ends in a box, a big box that's very heavy. So I don't know what that could be. We'll see. Probably a big finished copy would be nice. Let's see. Oh, a very pugnacious bean. Oh, can you see that? Can you make her out? She's going for this thing like crazy. Oh, what's the matter? Oh, you have something stuck. Here. There you go. There you go. Frida, you have something stuck in your mouth. You can't have that stuck in your mouth, baby. There you go. All right, I'll let her handle that on my own. So what do we got? What do we got here? Oh my. Okay. Okay. I don't recall ever getting this in advance copy. Okay. So. Wow. All right. This is probably due on May 7th. No, May 28th. Okay, it's May 28th. This is Correspondence by Tim Murphy, the author of Christodora. Kind of a nice cover. And this comes with blurbs from everyone in the world. Just everyone in the world. Stephen McCauley, who we saw in our last mail haul. Elliot Ackerman. Garth Greenwell. The New York Times. The Guardian. Lambda Literary. Hanya Yanagihara. Incredible. All right, so what is this then? Let's see here. This book tells the gripping and moving story of an Irish-Lebanese family in Massachusetts, centering on the eldest daughter, Rita, who works as a journalist in Iraq in the tumultuous post-invasion years, and on the bond she develops with her young Baghdadi interpreter. Spanning the breadth of the 20th century and into the post-9/11 wars and their legacy, Correspondence is a powerful novel that centers on Rita Khoury, an Irish-Lebanese woman whose life and family history mirrors the story of America. Both sides of Rita's family came to the United States in the golden years of immigration, which we see beautifully rendered in the first part of the novel. And in her home life in Boston, Rita grows into a stubborn perfectionist, and a relentlessly bright young woman. She studies Arabic at university and moves to cosmopolitan Beirut to work as a journalist, and is then posted to Iraq after the American invasion in 2003. In Baghdad, she finds for the first time in her life that her safety depends on someone else, her talented interpreter Nabil, an equally driven young man from a middle-class Baghdad family who is hiding a secret about his sexuality, hence the blurb by Garth Greenwell. As Nabil's identity threatens to put him in jeopardy and Rita's position becomes more precarious as the war intensified, their worlds start to unravel, forcing them out of the country and into an uncertain future. Boy, that sounds ambitious. Wow, okay. I don't think I knew about this book. So this is from the author of Christodora, and it comes out in a couple of weeks, but I will get to it today. Well, that sounds ambitious. Okay, great. So we open with a big complex novel. So let's move on here. Let's see. What is this next one? Okay. Okay, this is by Jacob Schell. We saw the advance copy of this. This is also a May release, I believe. No, June, mid-June. And this is the finished copy with lots and lots of blurbs. This is Giants of the Monsoon Forest, living and working with elephants. Humans have been living and working with elephants for millennia. Perhaps the most famous example is Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who led his army and elephants from North Africa and Spain over the Alps to Italy. But few know that this centuries-old tradition continues today among Asian elephants in the rainforests of India and Burma. Blending history, science, and reportage, the author Jacob Schell offers a new perspective on animal intelligence and reveals an unexpected relationship between evolution in the natural world and political struggles in the human one. In India and Burma, monsoon rains and glacial runoff make forests impassable by motor vehicles, horses, boats, or even tanks. Elephants, however, thrive in these conditions. Trained and ridden by hill and forest people known as mahouts, and using their unique physical strength and prowess, elephants facilitate logging and gem mining, ferry people and goods across rivers, and move rebels and their materiel. Elephants and mahouts share a mysterious bond and a unique, co-developed understanding of the sylvan country on which both of them, from distinct but overlapping reasons, depend. Shell explores the multifaceted world of Burmese elephants and their humans, the human-animal connection, animal rights, wildlife conservation, history, climate, geography, biology, and politics. Drawing on his many visits and interviews with mahouts and others, Shell explains how elephants are caught and trained, how mahouts balance work with wildness and happiness by releasing elephants nightly so they can eat their 600-pound daily meal, sleep, and mate, and how mahouts fetch elephants in the morning for another day's work. Okay, well, I've had the advanced copy of this thing, and I haven't read it yet, and now I'll need to. Now I'll absolutely need to. I'll absolutely need to read this now. It's going to anger me. I know that it is, because the elephants aren't working. They're slaves. There's not a working relationship. They're slaves. They don't have a choice in the matter. Shell notes that the working relationship between humans and elephants must be understood with open eyes. Okay. Beginning with the subject of catching elephants in the first place, which can sometimes amount to the animal being traumatically ripped from its family forever. Sometimes? It can sometimes amount to that? When does it not amount to that? You find a James Dean elephant, or a loner who's willing to sign on with you to see if maybe he can make it in this topsy-turvy world. Elephants are some of the most social animals in the world. It's never not that. You're never not ripping someone from home. And training involves harsh treatment and punishment. Violence and cruelty do occur in both directions. What on earth does that mean? These animals are slaves. They are brutalized. They have gigantic metal hooks thrust into their ears. They have torture implemented on them every day, sometimes by frustrated mahouts who are simply acting out their frustration on these helpless giants. There's no give and take here. There is no even relationship whatsoever. These animals are slaves. Anyway, I mean, it's due soon, so I really can't put it off any longer. I will just have to read it. I know that the publisher has high hopes for it. Of course they do, and I'm sure that the author, who is the author? He's young. He's a professor of geography and urban studies at Temple University, and he lives in Philadelphia. But I'll go into it with an open mind, but I went through this once before, this year, with The Last Fisherman, about a similarly young guy who similarly embeds himself in a similarly indigenous culture that similarly slaughters, exploits social, intelligent, culture-bearing animals, no different from humans except in form. And in that book, I was clearly supposed to not only side with the human fishermen, who have every option in the world except to do what they do. I was not only supposed to side with them, I was supposed to sort of pine to be one of them, because this is real living. And I was furious with that book, absolutely furious with it. And I will try with this thing. I will absolutely try. It's a rocky start. Okay, let's just move on. So that you don't get a whole lecture from me. Let's just move on. We'll move on to this next one. Feels like a finished copy again. Oh boy. Okay, great. This comes out in June. I am hoping to review this. This was really good. It was really, really good. Really disturbing in some ways, but really, really good. This is by Louise Aronson, and it's called Elderhood. The subtitle is Redefining Aging, Transforming Medicine, and Reimagining Life. And it's at its heart, it is all about the aging of the world and how we are just not ready for that at all. We're not even thinking about it. But let me see here. With modern increases in human lifespan, the period of elderhood, what the author calls the third and final stage of life after childhood and adulthood, may now span 40 years of our lives or more. But in American society, at the very moment we are living longer than ever before, we have turned old age into a disease, a condition to be dreaded, disparaged, neglected, and denied, as we try to avoid the signs of our own aging and mortality. Throughout elderhood, Aronson shares anecdotes of her 25 years of caring for patients and from her personal experiences of getting older and watching her parents age. From what these experiences have taught her, she envisions a large-scale shift in society's and medicine's attitude towards aging, making up a crucial adjustments in how we see the changes in each other's and our own bodies, how we care for older people, how we set doctors' salaries and bill patients, and ultimately, how we conceive the final third of life. And I've read a few other books on this subject. I've never read anything that came close to this for either eloquence or wisdom. I cannot recommend it strongly enough, and it touches all of us. It touches everyone. Every single time I go to the Christian Science Monitor, for instance, I walk by an elderly care facility, senior living, assisted living. There's a sign right on the wall of it, and there's the day room on the first floor has big windows, big bay windows that let in all the sun, and there are elders always seated in chairs around those windows, and they never have anything to do. They're never actually involved in anything. I've known people in situations like that, in facilities like that, where they're never visited by their loved ones. They have, an annuity, a pension, or Social Security that covers the cost of them being there, but the facility itself is usually understaffed and overworked, overhoured. So there's no stimulation anymore. These people have come to a full stop, but they still have years of life left in them. It's just... And this book covers all of that. It covers all of this really well. I'm glad to have the finished copy. I'm hoping to review it for a big audience, but for this audience, I can certainly say, read it somehow. Read it, buy it if you want to. You have elderly people in your life, or you will, and the author's more to the point, more directly. The author wants to stress that you will be elderly. And there's almost no avoiding that anymore, and it will last a long time. And a lot of the assumptions that you're making about it now will not be true. If things don't change, it will be much worse than you imagine. So okay, great. So those are two back-to-back nonfiction works, one of which I've had for a long time and haven't read because I think it's going to irritate me, and the other which I've had for a long time and have read, and I strongly recommend it. So that's great. All right, now we'll move on to one of these vacuum pressed cardboard things where you have to destroy the package completely. You have to tear it apart completely. It has adhesive on the inside, so you have to tear it apart completely like you were a bear. That's what it has to look like when you're done. Literally, there's no way to do it other than that, unless you had a pair of scissors handy and were willing to do that with every such package. Why publishers use this kind of thing, I have no idea. It must be cheap. That must be why they do it, but it is monstrously annoying. Anyway, so you have to tear the whole, might as well just tear the whole thing to shreds before you even move on to what's inside it. So what have we got here? Oh, great. Okay. All right. This is another finished copy. This is leading me to think that the thing in the box is going to be a big finished copy as well. Okay, so this comes out later. This comes out in the third week in May. We've seen it already. This is by Matthew Stanley, and it's called Einstein's War: How Relativity Triumphed Amid the Vicious Nationalism of World War I. And part of that triumph is the total eclipse of 1919. It's a story of Einstein's career during World War I. But the shadow that's coming is right after the war, when there was an eclipse that has been the subject of 3 or 4 books so far in 2019. An eclipse that the scientists all over the world recognized as a priceless opportunity to see whether or not the theory of relativity, as put forward by Einstein, was true. Aspects of it would be demonstrable in such an eclipse, and would also be disprovable in such an eclipse. But this, if I remember correctly, I still haven't got to this. If I remember correctly, this is more about, well, let's see here. In the midst of the bloody horror of the Great War, Einstein fought prejudice, starvation, and Germany's tumultuous government to further his investigation into relativity. But none of that would have mattered without the help of one man, A.S. Eddington, who's also features prominently in a couple of other Einstein books this year. Einstein's most important colleague and champion, who has since faded into the background. And their partnership is fully revealed in this new book, according to the pub sheet. In Einstein's War, Stanley debunks the idea that Einstein's rise to fame was instantaneous and easy. Okay, I'm not sure that ever was an idea. Rather, Einstein's celebrity was, in larger part, not his own doing. His grand ideas that would change physics forever, were formulated during a time of worldwide crises. The Great War quickly escalated into industrialized slaughter that bled Europe from 1914 to 1918. Einstein was a victim of that war, even though as a pacifist he never held a rifle. Trapped behind enemy lines in Germany, Einstein suffered from wartime starvation and found himself unable to communicate with his most trusted colleagues abroad. But perhaps the most damaging crisis Einstein faced was the war against science. As enemy lines were etched deeper, the worldwide science community became fractured and prejudiced. German scientists were scorned by the Allies, Einstein included. Even in Germany, Einstein was regarded as an outsider for resisting against German nationalism. Okay. The serendipitous partnership of Einstein and Eddington, two pacifist scientists a world apart, came to fruition in May of 1919, when Eddington led a globe-spanning expedition to catch a fleeting solar eclipse that offered a rare opportunity to confirm Einstein's bold prediction that light has weight, thereby confirming his theory of relativity. So this is 1919 as a linchpin year is allowing allowing publishers to flush out a whole little batch of Einstein books for 2019. It's another one of the year's anniversaries, and very welcome by me. I think Einstein's an incredibly fascinating figure, and tends to bring out the fascinating in people who write about him. So this is another one of those, probably the most sweeping and historical of the Shadow of a Doubt or Einstein's or Relativity's Eclipse or books like that are coming out this year. And then last thing we have is a box. It's heavy. I think it's probably a big finished copy. We shall see. There's one big finished copy that I'm kind of dreading, but I think we're too early for that one. I'm hoping that it's not. Oh, okay, great. Oh, fantastic. All right. Fantastic. Boy, oh boy. I love book publicists. I really do. Fantastic. All right. Let's do a little bit of background here. Oxford University Press, in the early fall, is coming out with a gigantic biography of Adolf Hitler by Peter Longerich. And when I saw that, I realized that as tough as it was going to be to do, I was going to want to bone up on Peter Longerich. So I asked the publicist for that book if maybe that could happen. I really wanted Longerich's last two biographies, but one of them was not put out by Oxford. So I have to go banging on other doors for that. Another one was, and that's one of the ones that this publicist sent me, is the paperback of his gigantic biography of Himmler, which I'm gonna have to wade through this, because I guarantee you that the same stretches of research in archives and contemplation and draft writing that gave birth to the Hitler book first gave birth to this one. That's just the way of it. That's the way that these things happen. You don't do all of this groundbreaking research, all of this original source research more than once. You do it once, and then it gives birth to other biographies. That's why you'll often see a biographer writing on multiple biographies of people from the same time period. Or, as is often the case, like, for instance, royal biographers, British royal biographers. If it's one family and they're spending years in the archives anyway, it'll produce more than one book. I remember this one. This got reviewed in a lot of places and favorably. So, and I read it and I really liked it. I might have even made one of my lists. It might have made my biography list for the end of the year. But I wanted to read it again, so the publicist was very kind to send it to me, and I noticed that the publicist also included his history of the Holocaust, which I did not ask for, but which is great. That's fantastic. I'm going to want to read this too. I'm going to take that Hitler book seriously, even though I went on a long rant when I got it about how do we really need 80 million biographies of this pathetic worm, this murderous little psychopath. However linchpin important he is in Western history, there were lots of other people who were as well, and we don't have biographies of them in anywhere near the number. So I even though I think that way, I'm still going to give that book serious attention. It will be a serious work for the fall, a major historian, a major work, be reviewed everywhere. So I'm gonna give it serious attention, and these two things will really help with that. And then I will have to find. I'm drawing a blank right now. I think the other book that I'm looking for is Goebbels, a gigantic biography of Goebbels that was a different publisher. I'll find out, and this will be a good reminder for me get the ball rolling to get that. So there we go. That is our second mail haul of the day. We end on the mother of all down notes with Heinrich Himmler and a book on the Holocaust, but by a great historian. Fantastic writer. So that's great. Glad to have these. Then the finished copy of Einstein's War, but Einstein during World War I, raising, among other things, the really head-scratching question of whether or not, what if Einstein had died during World War I? Imagine how that would have changed our present day. So there's that, and then there's also the finished copy of Elderhood, which I cannot recommend strongly enough. It is a deeply personal subject that literally touches all of us. So however you do it, request it at the library and read it. You should read this author's thoughts on the subject, because she is a really powerful and original thinker on the subject, not just of the way things are now, but of how they should change. A wonderful book, a wonderful experience, very personal, and also a call to action. Really recommend it. Then Giants of the Monsoon Forest, about elephants in Burma, in the giant, swelteringly hot and steep rainforest there, and their relationship with the industries that pay their human masters. Got to do it. I got to do it. If I had to read The Last Fisherman, then I have to read this thing, and I'll just control myself, or try to. And finally, Correspondence, an ambitious-sounding novel by the author of Christodor, and something that I don't think I knew was coming. So, not a bad mail. Not lots of stuff for Steve to dig into right away. So I'm going to go do that, not right away. First, I'm going to clean up the floor of the room, which is a disaster area, and there is the culprit. And then I'm going to take the culprit on a walk, as much of one as we can stand. It's freezing cold and spitting rain, but we'll do what we can. But then I'm going to dig right into these things. So I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.